Running Aces Casino and Racetrack is the Twin Cities' premier choice for exciting entertainment, 24/7 gaming and dining, monthly comedy shows, and $1 blackjack with no commission or ante, making it the most player-friendly casino around. Trout Air Tavern at Running Aces offers Minnesota-inspired handcrafted dishes with locally sourced ingredients and the trout that made the area famous. Running Aces Casino and Racetrack, 25 minutes north of downtown. Visit runaces.com. Running Aces, your night out is waiting. TCL is a proud sponsor of the 1500 ESPN studios. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand. Minnesota Vikings, the NFL, football, yeah, football. Welcome to Purple Podcast.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Purple Podcast. Matthew Coller here, along with former NFL quarterback Sage Rosenfels. Sage, let me start you right out with Drew Brees. Now, everybody is going to talk this week about how good Drew Brees is, how awesome he was in the second half of that game coming back in the Miracle game. Tell me your perspective, though. Tell me something that I don't know or that fans would not realize about Drew Brees that takes him from maybe he's just a good quarterback to this guy is Hall of Fame above everyone else. This is why he's the best.
That's a really good question. I came out with Drew in 2001 and, he was just one of these guys of all the guys at the combine. He sort of had like this, sort of electricity about him. Everybody really, really liked him. I remember his left tackle, Matt Light. We ended up having lunch together and he was talking about, Drew as a quarterback. He was, sort of one of those gym rat, competitive kids when he was growing up in Texas. Wasn't really recruited by anybody in Texas. I actually had a college coach who had been at TCU. They didn't recruit him, at all. He ends up at Purdue. And, here's a Drew Brees story. Again, I believe this was at maybe the combine or something after my senior year. And I'm talking to Marquise Tuiasosopo. If you remember that name, he was a quarterback at Washington, second round draft pick.
I covered Marquise Tuiasosopo. No, his brother? I covered it. I think either him or his brother in the minor leagues with baseball. Was he the one that played baseball?
Very possibly. I'm not really sure. But anyway, we're talking about the Rose Bowl. And Washington had lost to Purdue in the Rose Bowl. And Tui was talking about how, they sort of thought they had the win because Brees had gotten hurt, in that game and went in the locker room. And, I think that they took the lead or were coming back and they really thought they had this thing. And he said, literally when Drew Brees walked back out of the locker room and started throwing, it's like the whole team was like, crap, we're going to lose this game. I mean, he has that ability to make everybody around him better. And I think that's one of those things that is not talked about with quarterbacks. What is the team if he's not on it? How good is that team if he's not on it? And I think that Purdue team back in those days said you had Matt Light, but you didn't have a lot of other, stars on that team, maybe a guy or two that made the NFL for a couple of years, but not a ton of talent. He made that whole team so much better. He's made the New Orleans Saints team so much better over the years. And, that's the type of guy you want as a quarterback. Not a guy who just puts up big numbers or is a great thrower, a great athlete. Does he make the team around him better and sort of raise everybody else's game? Drew Brees is that guy.
So Kirk Cousins was talking about his accuracy, and it's interesting for the different perspectives because Mike Zimmer talks about it in the same way that you were just saying, of like when you're looking across at that guy and what a great competitor he is. And Zimmer didn't say this, but you get the feeling that it's just intimidating for what he's done throughout his career and knowing that he's the guy that you have to somehow find a way to beat. And it's very difficult to do. But from the accuracy standpoint, when guys are coming out in the draft, it always seems like, man, this guy has the biggest arm and he's physical, he can run so fast or jump so high and those types of things. And the two best quarterbacks in the NFL, Brady and Brees, not first-round picks. Aaron Rodgers, of course, right there in that with those guys, not at the very, very top. And all three of them have this remarkably great accuracy. Rodgers has the freak arm and not the other two so much. But what makes a quarterback as accurate as Drew Brees is?
I don't know. I wish I would have known when I was playing. I think all those guys have just, the way they throw, they're always sort of in great position. Rodgers he's a different deal. He does stuff with his feet in terrible position and still makes these throws. But, you watch Brady throw, Jason Garrett used to talk about it when he was my quarterbacks coach. He used to say, just watch how many times Brady's passes hit guys right in the chest, right? I mean, there's times where quarterbacks will put the ball only where their offensive guy can catch them. And there's times where, and Brady does this probably as good as anybody, you actually throw it to the receiver, so he will never drop it. Like, i.e. put it right in his chest, don't let the running back drop the pass by even having to extend his arms, 6 inches above his head or down by his waist. Put it right into his chest, and they almost never drop those. And so, their accuracy and just I think the way they understand their offensive guys around them, and that all these guys have been in the same offense for a long, long time. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Think of Michael Jordan with the triangle offense over all those years. He knew the ins and outs of every aspect of that offense, because they just ran it for years and years and years with Phil Jackson. I think that, these three quarterbacks in particular, one of the reasons that they're so good and so accurate is because they have been in the exact same offense. It comes secondhand to them. And then let's add to that. I think this is one of the reasons Eli Manning has significantly struggled, since they won that last Super Bowl in 2011. Kevin Gilbride, finally ended up retiring. And ever since then, it's been different versions of usually the West Coast system. That's not how Eli was trained for about the first 10 years of his career. He has struggled ever since, right? So I think that, these guys being the same offense, and obviously they're throwing motion, the way they work with wide receivers, the way they take care of their bodies and stuff in the off season. These three guys, and let's add Phillip Rivers to it. He's a Hall of Fame type guy, in my opinion. They're a lot of fun to watch, and they make everybody around them better.
So that kind of speaks to something that came up in Zimmer's press conference about the fourth quarter and Drew Brees and all these great quarterbacks. It just seems like the situational stats that all of their numbers are good, but where you truly take away a lot of the noise of the score and, things like that, where you see their performances in fourth quarters that are close, third down and longs that really make quarterbacks into who they are, show us who they are. And with him, it's about as good as you could ever imagine. Is there something that he does when you get to the fourth quarter? Or is it, like you're saying, knowing his head coach, knowing his offense, and then being able to see the opposing team's defense for the entire game?
I think it's a huge help that Brees and Sean Payton have been together for this long. I think they basically think about football and offensive football, defensive football the exact same way. I don't think you can really quantify, how valuable that is. I've always believed quarterbacks, you look at the stats and, Kirk Cousins has a 101 rating, touchdown to interceptions. You look at all these things. I want to look at third downs. I believe the really good quarterbacks, the reason they're paid the most is not because of first and second down when they can run play action, when they get these sort of base defensive coverages usually, not as much blitzing or complex blitzing going on. It's these third down packages and not really, again, not third and 1, not third and 2. I'm talking, third and 5, third and 8, third and 10 plus. That's where, the elite quarterbacks really separate themselves, and Brees is one of those guys.
Yeah, what you're bringing up is something that we talked about a lot with Teddy Bridgewater, of why the Vikings would want to sign on to him long term, that through 2014 and 15, he didn't have any of those huge numbers, in large part in 2015 because they were handing to Adrian Peterson more than any other running back in the league. But he was extremely, extremely good on third down and long, where defenses know you're going to pass. There's no play action that you can do usually on third down and long, and that really shows up. And for the Vikings, that's where they struggled last week. And where Kirk Cousins struggled is getting into some of those third and longs. When you went back and looked at the game, did you feel like there was something the Jets did, or just that the Vikings were always in third and long and that was the cause of some of the third down issues?
Replacement windows. Not in your budget this year? Well, what if you could save 20%? Renewal by Andersen, full-service replacement window division of Andersen, are putting windows back in your budget with this exclusive podcast-only offer. You know how much I love this and what a difference it makes. You owe it to yourself, people. You save 20% on windows, 20% on patio doors, an additional $20 on every window. Don't settle for low-end vinyl windows. Renewal by Anderson's composite Fibrex window material is 2 times stronger than vinyl. And you can save 20% on windows and patio doors, plus an additional $20 off each and every window with 0 down, 0 payments, and 0 interest for a year. The air conditioning works better. It's so much quieter. The heater's better. Everything is better. Dust is down. So for a free renewal by Anderson Windows Diagnosis, call 1-800-406-8700. Again, 1-800-406-8700. 1-800-406-8700. Dawson.
Offer not available in all areas. Restrictions and conditions apply. Call for license information.
I think there's a couple of things. They're constantly in these third and long situations. I think going against a win for both teams felt like it was nearly impossible for much of the game, especially as you crossed the 50 going into that wind. It looked like it was about 30 miles an hour. But it seemed to me that the Vikings weren't running the ball much on second down, whether it was 2nd and 2 or 2nd and 10. It seemed like they would go right to pass. And that's, if those were incomplete, especially in the second long situations, you're really going to be in third and long situations. So maybe that's something that they can work on, or maybe that's something that Zimmer and John DeFilippo are talking about earlier this week. Is hey, on 2nd and 8, let's see if we can't run the football, even if it's in a sort of a spread out set. We can spread the defense out, make it look like a pass, and run some sort of draw or one back run or something. It's okay to be in 3rd and 5. You don't have to get first downs on 2nd down. That's why you pay Kirk Cousins $28 million a year. He should be great at 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5 or under. I feel very comfortable with Kirk Cousins completing, a lot of those passes and getting a lot of those first downs. Where I don't feel comfortable? 3rd and 8 plus with the ball in Kirk Cousins' hand. I mean, we've been talking about this with his fumbles, with stepping up in the pocket. That's when disaster seems to strike on the 3rd and long situations.
And I had this stat in an article that I wrote yesterday that on these 3rd and longs, he averages just 5.4 yards per attempt, which is not very good. And that might change as we go along, but I'm
sure it's hand down the worst of every down, 1st down, 2nd down, 3rd down. Those 3rd and longs are, it's an impossible situation for Corp. And who hates them more than the quarterbacks? The offensive line.
Right.
The offensive line hates 3rd downs, in particular this offensive line who, it's no secret they're not the best pass protectors in the league. I'm sure they prefer to come off the football. And here they are in all these 3rd and long situations. It must be really frustrating in that room right now.
So I noticed that the Jets were finding ways to double team Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. That I went through and I took my little MS Paint thing and circled them, how many times that they, on those 3rd and longs, had 2 guys on top of Diggs and Thielen. And I wonder if there's a response to that, because they are going to get in 3rd and long sometimes. Maybe they reduce them, but they are. But now, finally, it seems like, at least for the Jets, and other teams may copy this, looked at those 2 receivers and said, beat us with someone else, we dare you.
Oh, I think that's absolutely the game plan for that game, and it's going to be the game plan going forward. I love Rudy, Kyle Rudolph. He's not a 3rd and long, first down maker. He's a sort of a mid-range wide receiver. He can run some seam routes, but he's not a guy that's going to stretch the field as a tight end. He's never been super fast, and now he's, closer to the end of his career. So, that's why it was a 4th and 6 or something when the Vikings did a touchdown pass to Robinson. If you go back and watch that film, they're doubling Thielen on the one side. Diggs was on the other side in the slot, and they doubled him in the slot. One guy played outside, and the safety played on the inside, so they really were doubling him. And then Robinson was one-on-one by himself. So that is why that 3rd wide receiver position, which we haven't talked about much in the last month or so, we definitely talked about earlier in the year, with Laquan Treadwell and all of that. But that's why that 3rd wide receiver position is so vital, is that, hey, you can take away our number 1 and or our number 2, but you can't take away 3. And that was a really, really big play in the ball game, obviously.
And to your earlier point about 3rd and long versus 3rd and short, now 3rd and short is where Kyle Rudolph is fantastic. And over the last 2 years, he's been terrific at, maybe they make it look like they're going to run to the outside and then he leaks out and he's wide open in the flat. This has happened a few times this year. He's great when you can run a play action and he looks like he's going to block and then doesn't. He's wide open. He's been so good at those, and red zone, of course, too, but that is another sort of key that they were able to achieve with Case Keenum last year and Pat Shurmur, is utilizing Kyle Rudolph in this way. And so far this year, especially if you're in third and long, you just really can't go to him.
Well, Rudy's actually, he's sort of sneaky good on certain types of underneath pass plays, shallow crossing routes. For whatever reason, he always gets separation or seems to get separation from, a lot of times it's a strong safety or linebacker. And then he catches the ball and usually turns it up and seems to make some pretty good plays on that. But in third and long, you're talking about going vertical. It's not what he does best. And, there's another thing that, as we're sort of sitting here thinking about it, they don't run a lot of just, traditional, whether tight end screens, or even running back screens on these third and long situations. I know sometimes as a fan, it's like, oh crap, third and 12, we run this stupid screen and we got, 5 yards or whatever. But, sometimes the best way to win is to sort of not lose. I know it sounds dumb, but, when you throw the ball in third and long, you're talking about interceptions, incompletions, sacks, sack fumbles, holding penalties that kick you back even further, which did occur in this football game. You had a situation where I think the Vikings had a 4th and 34 after a holding penalty and then a sack or something. So, bad can turn into worse in third and long. And again, that's why I think we both believe they need to find ways to get in, third and medium, third and short situations, rather than trying to probably throw the ball so much on first and second down.
It was just really interesting that they played that game like they were losing when they were winning the whole time. That you would, and it just didn't make a whole lot of sense at times. And I wonder if that's something that John DeFilippo is still figuring out as he goes along. This is only the second time that he's ever been in charge of driving the bus as a play caller. And I feel like last year, we would have seen lots of David Morgan, C.J. Ham, and lots of Latavius Murray in a game like that on first and second down. Remember, the one game they're playing Chicago, and they run every single down, all the way, just kill the clock, pounding into the other team. And then this year with Arizona at the end, they did it, but could have probably done it in other situations too.
Yeah, listen, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They start this game with a 7-yard run with Latavius Murray. There's a helmet-to-helmet tackle on that play that ends up being a 15-yard penalty. So really, it's a 22-yard play. Second play of the game for the Vikings offense, a 9-yard run by Mike Boone. You know what the third play was? A naked bootleg on 2nd and 1. So you just ran for 7, then you just run for 9, and then you throw the ball, right? As an offensive lineman, it's like, listen, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's okay to consistently just run the ball down the field. Less negative variables happen on running plays. And my guess is you're probably hearing some of those offensive linemen, wishing they ran the ball well, because they are running the ball well. They're just not running the ball very often, which is why they're 27th in the league in rushing.
Well, give me the stat that you gave me off the air before we started recording about Latavius Murray.
Latavius Murray's averaging 4.8 yards per carry. Mike Boone's at 4.5 in his 8 carries. And Todd Gurley, who a lot of people have as an NFL MVP candidate right now, is averaging 4.8 yards per carry. Kareem Hunt, another one of the best running backs in the league, and also Ezekiel Elliott, another really good running back. Those guys are at 4.7. So the Vikings are 27th in the league in rushing, but their running back is really having one of the better seasons as far as yards per carry average. He's amongst the very, very best in the league.
Let me, before I ask you about where you were with the Minneapolis Miracle, I want to give you my Kyle Rudolph comparison. I think Kyle Rudolph is a car that you drive around and you're like, I wish it was a little faster. I wish that the cup holders were in a different spot, or my Bluetooth doesn't work. You know what? I should go get a new car. I should get a different car. And then you get in the new car and it's got a recall issue and something else doesn't work. It breaks immediately. And you're like, man, my reliable car was a lot better than this new car that actually isn't that great. And that's what I think of with Rudolph, that it's not flawless. It's not Travis Kelce or Rob Gronkowski, but every time they try to go get some sort of sports car, like, we're going to get Michael Pruitt and he'll run really fast, or Bucky Hodges and he'll be the deep threat. And it shows you how difficult that position is to play.
Yeah, Rudolph is like a Chevy Tahoe. He's like this big, sort of strong thing. There's not a lot of super fancy upgrades in it. You paid good money for it. It does its job. It can get you through the hard times, but is he going to win? Is he going to win your races? No, he's not going. He's not a Range Rover. But also doesn't come with the Range Rover problems as far as when it breaks down, and he's not, as expensive or whatever. So yeah, he does a lot of good things, but stretching the field vertically, is just not one of the things that he does well. And David Morgan, the second tight end, does a lot of really good things as well, but he also doesn't have that, sort of, extreme speed for a tight end. And so, that might be something that they're really looking for in the offseason, whether it's, the draft or free agency.
For fans of The Simpsons, David Morgan is the Canyon Arrow. Were you a Simpsons guy?
No.
Oh man, I'll send you the clip then.
Sounds good.
There's a parody commercial of giant SUVs, and it was called the Canyon Arrow. And Simpsons fans know exactly what I'm talking about. I'll send it to you. So tell me about your perspective on the Miracle play.
My perspective on the Miracle play, I was in the press box. I was standing next to Peter King, who was sitting down. I believe he was sitting down at the time. And then he stood up after it happened, but he and I were chatting. It was coming to the end of the game. I was actually going to go down to the Saints locker room either way. Again, I've had this sort of long relationship with Drew, known him for 18 years now. And then, obviously that sort of crazy play happened, and the press box was, as the press box, you're supposed to not really yell or say anything. You're supposed to be sort of, you're supposed to be stoic or just, not be rooting for a certain team, even though obviously everyone's sort of rooting for their local team. But, no one's really supposed to say too much. And there were definitely some sort of like screams going on. And then it was a rush to the elevators. I mean, people immediately that's the end of the game. We got to get downstairs right now to be, first in line for the locker room and press conferences. And again, I took the stairs down and ended up in the Saints locker room, which is obviously very, very different than the Vikings locker room. And the reason I wanted to do that was because for me, it reminded me of Bounty Gate, the 2009 championship game. I remember being in the locker room where your season ends, with a terrible ending, to a game. So I guess I want to maybe go back and relive some of that. I will say this. I felt like our locker room in 2009, I guess it was 2010 at that time, but 2009 season, was probably more depressing even than that Saints locker room. A lot of young guys on this Saints roster, other than Brees, a lot of young guys. And so, for them, it's, there's always next year. But for that team in 2009, we had a lot of guys at the end of their career, near the end, obviously, other than Favre, but, guys like Steve Hutchinson and even Jared Allen had a couple of years left after that. But, a lot of guys that that sort of know how tough it is or knew how tough it is to get to a championship game. And then that was a very, very depressing end of that game.
That's interesting because, of course, I went to the Vikings locker room, and that was an unbelievable scene. But what I remember most was going up to Harrison Smith and being like, oh, so, how do you feel about this? And this is crazy. And Harrison says, well, yeah, I mean, we got a game next week, so I'm already starting to think about that. It's like you have grown men crying at their lockers at what had just happened and celebrating and yelling and something I've never seen before. That's probably as close as you'll get to what a Super Bowl locker room looks like. And here's Harrison Smith. Yeah, well, I'm already looking at the tape for next week. It's just,
I tell you, sometimes in the NFL, losing sucks and winning is not like the equivalent of losing on the other side, right? It's not like the positive equivalent to the negativity of losing. There's more relief in winning. That's the weird thing, in particular when you're favored, like the Vikings were in that game because they were the second seed and playing at home. So, I'm sure Harrison was, if anything, just relieved and really happy to try to prepare for that championship game.
And I'm going to give myself credit for one thing when the Vikings got the ball back or when they made the stop, because for whatever reason, the New Orleans Saints decided not to have Drew Brees throw the football on 3rd and 1, where they could have kept the clock going and potentially scored a touchdown and really put that thing to bed. And when they got the stop, because running at Linval Joseph makes a lot of sense, I started writing Case Keenum leads an incredible comeback, because I thought if they lose here, no fan is going to care to read what's going on, that people are going to throw bricks at their televisions and leave the house and go mow their lawns or whatever. It was nighttime. But so I thought, okay, well, there's only one of these things that people will read. So I started writing Keenum reads, and then of course it happens, and I was able to publish the article right away, and it got a ton of hits. But like,
that's where I can. I don't know how easily I could be like a regular writer. For me, it takes me a lot of times a day or even a couple of days to, one, rewatch the game, but two, sort of like, gather all my collective thoughts from that game, the good and the bad and the ugly. When I am in those media areas, for the game, the press boxes, it's amazing to me how many writers are actually writing about the game as the game is going on, having no idea how the thing is going to end. I said I'm one of those guys that, I need a little bit of time to take it all in and then to collect my thoughts.
It's a trick, man. I mean, it takes a lot of learning how to do it exactly. Like, okay, we've got a TV timeout. Here we go. I can get a couple of paragraphs in, and you get a sense for the game. So what I usually do is I start writing in halftime, because a lot of times you've got a sense for where this thing is going. Like against the Jets, they're not going to lose this game.
Yeah, very true.
So like,
very
okay,
true.
Let's take a look.
When the Vikings had a lot of those games last year where they had some sort of second quarter, third quarter, 2 touchdown lead, and you sort of knew it was just going to be a sort of an ugly ending with conservative football on offense and good defense, and the game would just sort of end in a 10-point win. And a lot of Vikings games ended that way last year.
So before Journeyman Quarterback of the Week, tell me, which I'm very excited about, tell me who wins this game, or at least what the determining factor is if you're not a picks guy.
I like the Saints in this game. I do. I think the Saints are an improved team from last year. They have so many good players on offense, and I just the Vikings are doing a lot of good things, and they're playing better football the last couple weeks. They've also played against 2 rookie quarterbacks and 2 pretty bad offenses and bad offensive lines, and so I'm not sold much at all on the Vikings yet. I'm very lukewarm on them. I am sold on the Saints. I think they're one of the best teams in the NFC. As of right now, I'd pick them in the Rams in the NFC Championship game.
I agree with you. I do think that the Saints win this game, but that the Vikings show signs of the same progress that we've seen over the last few weeks, that they don't just melt down like they did against the Rams and give up 500 yards to Brees or something. That it's
I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a very good game. It always comes down to the key plays in the game. Give me the quarterback, and if you compare the two, I'll take Brees in this one.
Yeah, hard to disagree with that. Okay, Journeyman Quarterback of the Week. First, before we get to who our selection is, I just want to say the 1999 New Orleans Saints season is the greatest backup quarterback, journeyman quarterback season of all time. You have Billy Joe Tolliver, Billy Joe, what's the other one?
Hobart,
right. And then you have Jake Delhomme and Danny Werfel all playing on the same team. What?
Well, there you have it. Yeah, Jake Delhomme, Jake Delhomme. Started his career as a backup to, I believe Aaron Brooks was maybe the starter during that area. Mike McCarthy was the offensive coordinator. I think he went from quarterback coach to offensive coordinator in the late 90s and early 2000s. And maybe it was more early 2000s. But, Delhomme was on that team. Daniel Werfel, a 3rd-round draft pick. And a couple of years later, I actually played with him in Washington under Steve Spurrier for off-season and training camp. So I got a little a Werfel action. I believe I played golf with Billy Joe Tolliver one time in Dan Marino in Miami. That was very random.
And then
super Billy
random.
Joe Hobart, or Bear, however you want to say. He might be. Is he the voice of the Saints, or maybe has a radio show down in New Orleans? I feel like he's still sort of.
Okay, so that's Bobby Bear, and then there's
Bobby
Billy
Hebert,
Joe
yes.
Hobart. Now, what happened with Billy Joe Hobart one time was the Buffalo Bills signed him as a backup quarterback, and he had to go in like the first week, and it was the biggest disaster you've ever seen. And after the game, he admitted that he basically had never studied the playbook.
I remember this, and I think that was the end of the road.
And that was it. It's just like, okay, all right, well, we'll find somebody else then, I guess. I mean, under stupid ways for a backup quarterback to get cut, not knowing the playbook. And then Chad Kelly set a new record with stand on someone's lawn and get arrested at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yep. Well, it's, you you can't teach an old dog new tricks sometimes. That's the way it goes. So who we talking about this week? Who we focusing on? We always focus on the opponents. Are we going to focus on anyone in particular this week?
Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience this football season. Tons of TVs, legendary appetizers, amazing fresh half-pound burgers, handcrafted sandwiches, and a wide variety of other pub favorites. The drink menu is awesome, too. Huge selection of tap beer, handcrafted cocktails, and the best Bloody Marys in town. Seriously, these Bloodies are awesome. Try the Bacon Bloody, the Jalapeno Bloody, the Mother Mary, or just get a flight and try them all. Plus, Lucky's 13 celebrates Sunday Fun Day. Happy hour all day long on Sunday, every Sunday. Events and prize giveaways during games, too. Lucky's 13 has locations in Bloomington, Burnsville, Mendota, Plymouth, and Roseville. Having people over for the game? Call ahead to Lucky's and order some of those legendary apps, and they'll be ready to bring home when you get there. It's football time at Lucky's 13 Pubs. Find them online at luckys13pub.com. luckys13pub.com. It's the most wonderful time of the year, football time. And Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience. luckys13pub.com.
It's time for Matthew and Sage to honor one of the NFL's great journeyman quarterbacks.
Yes, well, this guy has played for both teams, the Saints and the Vikings, and that is Todd Bouman, who did not get his first real sniff of NFL game action until age 29 and came in and played pretty well. He went 1-2 as a starter, ended up with 98 quarterback rating, 8 touchdowns, 4 picks, and really didn't get another shot after that to ever be anybody's starter. But there is one great wiki factoid, and then he played for New Orleans briefly, 3 starts in 2005, lost all 3. But the wiki factoid from Todd Bouman is there is a headline in his Wikipedia that says 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th stints with the Jaguars.
Yes, that's a great, I see this. I'm looking at the Wikipedia with you. Yeah, you have, here's his career. Minnesota Vikings, New Orleans Saints, Green Bay Packers, first stint with Jaguars, St. Louis Rams, second stint with Jaguars, Baltimore Ravens, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th stints with the Jaguars. Obviously, my guess is that he was signed and cut, multiple times during the season, which does occur on your number 3 quarterback a lot of times or whatever. So, yeah, I think that's a definition of journeyman quarterback. If you've played for one team 6 times, you've journeyed just on that team. So
that's right.
Yes. Now he's also a Minnesota boy.
He is,
correct?
St. Cloud.
Yes, he is St. Cloud kid from Ruthton, Minnesota. That's where he was born. And it's nice to talk about some local guys. So yeah, he had a really nice career. Had a really big arm. Todd Baum. That's what I remember about him the most. Is that he had a really, really strong arm. So when he was down there, he backed up a little bit with like Aaron Brooks, who had a cannon too for the Saints. I just remember going, man, these guys, and it was, me and Jay Fiedler and Brian Greasy in Miami, and we used to play in the preseason. I'm like, man, this team has a couple guys with some cannons, and here all of us have like these, fairly average arms. And so, yeah, Todd Bouman, really big arm and had a nice career.
I love going through this. Released in favor of Jamie Martin. He was signed to back up Quinn Gray. He was the backup when Gus Frerotte went down once in St. Louis. I mean, this is incredible. He was Kyle Bowler. John Beck comes up in this. Luke McCown when he was placed on
Trent
injured reserve.
Trent Edwards.
Yeah,
Trent Edwards is also in here somewhere. Quinn Gray, David Garrard. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. The life of a journeyman. Okay, Sage.
He did, but here's a nice thing about it. Here's the cool thing about being a journeyman backup. He, played for all these teams, but, and they're all different, right? I don't know how many good, hey, I've got some good Mark Bulger stories for you, right? I mean, he probably doesn't have a lot of those, but he did get to have a cup of tea with the Green Bay Packers, and Aaron Rodgers when Aaron Rodgers was very young. that's the cool things you get to have, is you got to have that cup of coffee with him, and probably carry some of those stories when he sort of knew Aaron Rodgers early in Aaron's career. He'll get to carry those for the rest of his life and get to tell some of those stories. That's one of the benefits of being a journeyman backup.
Yeah, I talked to a guy on this podcast who his name was Matt Blanchard. He worked with the same QB guru as Kirk Cousins. That was the connection. But he had been on the practice squad with Cam Newton, Andrew Luck, and Aaron Rodgers were like the 3 quarterbacks that he got to be in practice with. So it was, not too many people can say that. So
it's pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah.
Congratulations to Todd Bauman, our journeyman quarterback of the week. And Sage, we will talk to you next week after it's all over and break it down.
Sounds good.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening to the Purple Podcast.
Suspicious packages. I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. Police are investigating packages, crude pipe bombs, that were intercepted addressed to Hillary Clinton and former President Barack Obama. A device was found at CNN headquarters in New York. John Miller is with NYPD.
It appears that an individual or individuals sent out multiple similar packages.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says his office received a similar package, and the FBI says Florida Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz did too. Hillary Clinton was out of town in Florida.
We are fine, thanks to the men and women of the Secret Service who intercepted the package addressed to us long before it made its way to our home.
Police Chief Peter Newsham in Washington talked about the package sent to Barack Obama.
The package was found at a screening facility located in Washington, D.C.
The White House quickly condemned the attacks aimed at Democrats. I'm Ed Donahue.